So a new Canadian record was just set, and all to screw over Pierre Poilievre. There's now more than 100 candidates, the most in Canadian history, who are running against him in his by-elections.
Disruptive.
Weird thing to happen. It's happening again, folks. It's happening yet again, right under our noses, making an entire mockery of the electoral process in Canada. It has literally just become such an obvious joke that yet again, as Pierre Poilievre is seeking a seat in the House of Commons after being ousted in Carleton the first time around by the Long Ballot Initiative, guess what? The Long Ballot Initiative now tracks him down to his Alberta riding. Surprise, surprise. Once again, this is happening, folks. And as reported by City News, more than 100 candidates registered for Battle River Crowfoot riding by-election. Interesting. And people will say that, well, that's a part of democracy. We're supposed to allow people to run in races. And so if there's 100 candidates that want this riding, that's part of democracy. Just deal with it. Well, why is it only Pierre Poilievre's riding? How come there wasn't 100 some odd contenders when it was Mark Carney's riding in Nepean? Why didn't Elizabeth May had to deal with the Long Ballot Committee, or Jagmeet Singh, or who's the Bloc Québécois? I keep forgetting his name. Why isn't any of them had to deal with it? Why is it only these particular ridings? That's what made this so suspicious. That the claims that they made about reforming the electoral process and they're protesting against the elections of Canada, that is complete crap. Because if they really were, they'd be going after Elections Canada and not pandering to specific ridings, especially ones with Pierre Poilievre is a contender on. This makes this more and more suspicious. The more than 100 candidates are vying to win the August 18th by-election in the rural Alberta riding of Battle River Crowfoot. Elections Canada's website shows that Thomas, how do you say that? I'm not even going to begin to try to pronounce that correctly, but we'll make it sound like a dying robot. With the Longest Ballot Committee, is the agent behind 103 of the 108 registered candidates. 108 registered candidates. This is the longest ballot in Canadian history. It's actually broken records. And again, I ask, why is it only specifically Pierre Poilievre's riding? Why have we not seen this in any other riding? Why wouldn't they have this in Toronto? Why wouldn't they have this in, major metropolitan areas? They could do this in Vancouver. They could do this in Nova Scotia. But no, any riding with Pierre Poilievre is automatically being traced down by this Longest Ballot Committee. Makes this really more suspicious. Has said that the committee has been registering candidates to protest Canada's electoral system. The committee has helped dozens of candidates register in multiple by-elections in Ontario, Quebec, and Manitoba since 2022. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is among the candidates seeking a seat in the House of Commons for Battle River Crowfoot riding. Conservative Damien Couric handily won the riding in the April general election, but stepped down to allow Poilievre to run after the party leader lost his long-held Ottawa seat of Carleton. So, for those who may be aware or remember our long-stated segment about it, that the Carleton riding, when Pierre Poilievre was running the first time, there was a lot of scandal in that particular riding. Not only was the Longest Ballot Initiative Committee subsequently just completely splitting up the votes by their 90 some odd candidates that we had no idea where they came from, who they're representing, what parties, what initiatives. They had no platform whatsoever, but apparently they were just allowed to run in this one particular riding with Pierre Poilievre. Surprise, surprise. But also there was a lot of gerrymandering to this particular district because Carleton once upon a time, had different districts, and Carleton did not have the population it has now. And a lot of that population growth isn't from people moving to said region of Ottawa in Ontario. It had more to do with the fact that there was a large influx of migrants, of refugees, of people coming into Canada undocumented and then housing them in that district. Which, I'm not saying that making this I'm not making this an immigration issue, but that is also part of the tactic. That is also part of the tactic in this electoral disaster, this mockery of democracy, and why it's so laughable that so many of these candidates, so many of these political parties that will stand on stage and rally to protect democracy is actually doing everything in their power to demise democracy by doing this. This is not helping the process. This is actually making a mockery of the situation. The Longest Ballot Committee claiming that they're reforming the electoral process and protesting against it. It's just an utter freak show. It's an utter freak show. Why isn't the Longest Ballot Committee protesting Elections Canada? Why aren't they going after the offices that are making these decisions, that actually have the power to reform the electoral process? Why are they going after specific districts, especially ones with Pierre Poilievre in it? Just saying. So here, there's breaking. Over 100 candidates are now running in Pierre Poilievre's by-election, which is the most in Canadian history. The Longest Ballot Committee needs to be banned from doing these stunts in the future. This is completely unacceptable. And here's Table Salt also chiming in, saying, breaking. This is how many candidates are now running in Poilievre's riding. You won't believe this. This is insanity. We are a joke. So he links this video. This is from the Elections Canada website of all the candidates that are running in this district. And you can see the long laundry list here. Pull this up. Look at it. And all these ones are independent. All these ones are independent. There's the Libertarian Party. Again, what's their platform? What's their platform? What's their measures? Did you notice how a lot of them, only very select few, have websites? Did you notice that? Look at this. Kimberly Nugent? Is that how you say it? Nugent? I was going to say Nugget. Kimberly Nugent has a website, and this John Francis O'Flynn has a website, but none of the other ones do. None of the other ones do. And look, they're all supported by this Tomas guy. Isn't that kind of suspicious? Doesn't this make a mockery of you protecting democracy? That's what makes this so troublesome. That's what makes this so conflicting, and why it needs to be investigated, why it needs to stop, and why this is making an entire attack on democracy, on the ability for people to choose. And there's Pierre Poilievre. There's the Liberal Party, Darcy Spady. Christian Heritage Party of Canada. I didn't even know that was a thing. But look at that. All these people, independents, very few of them have websites. Very few of them actually have information on what these specific people are running on. I don't know what their platform is. I don't know what they're running on. I don't know what their skills are, or where they came from, or anything about them. But they're allowed to run in this riding, to overstuff the ballot, to make a mockery of the electoral process, specifically in Pierre Poilievre's riding. It's unbelievable that this continues on without any hesitation. So here's Mark Azalea pointing this out also. and he does a breakdown video of this. It says, breaking, the Longest Ballot Committee has set the record and registered more than 100 candidates in Pierre Poilievre's by-election, the most in Canadian history. Ridiculous. This loophole needs to be pulled. So here's what he says.
So a new Canadian record was just set, and all to screw over Pierre Poilievre. There's now more than 100 candidates, the most in Canadian history, who are running against him in his by-election. There's now a total of 108 candidates that have been registered so far, beating the previous record in the last election of 91. And as many of you know, Elections Canada has not stepped in, has not changed any of the rules, and is allowing this to happen. And rightfully so, Pierre called this a scam, and it's a loophole that needs to be plugged. And this is the type of thing that shouldn't matter what side of the political spectrum you fall under. This is a blatant attack on democracy. This is nothing more than a mockery of Canada and our election process. Elections Canada needs to step up and put an end to this madness. So a new Canadian record was...
So, yeah, this is why this is such a major deal. This is why I bring this to attention, not to, defend Pierre Poilievre, which I'm sure people are going to cut out and leave out context and say, oh, Kitz Corner is obviously defending Pierre Poilievre in this, and he's definitely on that side. No, this is not about defending Pierre Poilievre. This is about defending the democratic institution. This is about defending our democracy that people so faintly claim that they're doing with these initiatives, these stupid initiatives, when we know it's an obvious scam. We know that they're doing the exact opposite of defending democracy. You're making a mockery. You're botching the electoral process, and it's actually making things worse in the situation. If you just let people vote for whatever candidate that best represents them, that is what true democracy is. Not overstuffing the ballots with useless, empty candidates that we can't even look at or even examine because none of them actually present any information. There's no platform, there's no website, there's no contact info. They're just randos out of nowhere. It's like NPCs roaming into the ballot candidacy. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And it's happening again. Again. Right under your noses. Right under your noses. And for people to just sideline this because, oh, well, it's Pierre Poilievre, so why do I care? Again, Pierre Poilievre is, irregardless if it was his district or not, having this measure is an absolute joke. Is an absolute joke. And for them to claim that they're doing this in protest of the electoral system in Canada is an obvious fabrication. Because if they actually cared about reforming the process, they would go right to Elections Canada. They would go right to the people that actually had the power and responsibility to do something. Instead of doing this just absolute joke. This absurdity. And notice how it's only Pierre Poilievre's district. Notice how it's only those specific districts and not really anywhere else in the country. Well, just to remind people, the intention of why the Liberal Party is okay with this, why the NDP may be okay with this, why so many people are so disgusted by Pierre Poilievre, even though Pierre Poilievre governs really no different than most of the parliamentarian. That's why, even as I say, I'm not defending Pierre Poilievre because I know Pierre Poilievre, even if he was prime minister, would be doing the same things that Mark Carney's doing. Like, the whole parliamentarian is completely corrupted, completely captured by this dark entity that really controls the world and countries. But the reason they're doing this is because they can't have someone like Pierre Poilievre as the front man. That's why they kicked him out the first time. That's why they brought back Andrew Scheer, of all people. Andrew Scheer, of all people, to be the leader of the opposition. Oh, I'm going to, go right after the Liberal Party with kid gloves. I'm going to do the light touch. Because right here, can Mark Carney defeat Canadian populism? That's their ultimate enemy right here. Canadian populism, a.k.a. you, a.k.a. anything that does well for the nation of Canada. The overwhelming majority that want to end the funding in Israel and Ukraine and bring that money back home to serve the needs of Canadians. That's what they mean That's what populism is, and they despise it so much. That's why they're fabricating votes. That's why they're doing all this. That's why they're undermining the democratic institution of Canada. Because they don't care about democracy. They care about extorting their powers. They care about keeping this insidious establishment status quo debauchery, continuing that as long as they can do it. And if it goes and slaps you right in the face with this long ballot initiative, so be it. And it's just amazing it's happening yet again, and people are still not waking up to this. People still are not fully understanding the whole concept of this. And here's another point to make, that this just came out. This is straight from Elections Canada, by the way. Even they know that the democratic institutions, the whole ballot initiatives, the whole voting process has become such a sham. 121,000 mail-in ballots went uncounted. 121,000 mail-in ballots went uncounted in the last election. 121,000. Who's saying that? Elections Canada. They even admitted them to the general public that they're not even doing their job correctly. So while they scream about saving democracy, that they care so much about the values of people and going to the polls and all this stuff, they're not even doing their own jobs. They're not even doing their own jobs. They're not counting ballots. We've exposed Elections Canada, scrutinized them on their mishandling of ballots, how they left it in public parks, how they left it on street corners, the absolute absurdity of the whole, ballots and how to deal with them, the mishandling of it, the discrediting of the entire electoral system, to get someone like Mark Carney, a central banker who appeared out of nowhere, to become prime minister. And it says feds already admitting mislabeling some of the ballots and leaving others unopened. We're demanding transparency. That's what Blacklock reporter is saying, that they're demanding transparency. So this is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And ultimately, this is why someone like me, after all these years, have just finally came to the conclusion this is the hardest pill for people to swallow, which is why I think so many people can't understand this, is electorally, nothing changes. Electorally, it's ridiculous. You might as well just not vote. Because electorally, nothing changes, nothing gets done, nothing gets accomplished, other than picking the new mascot of a team that's still going to play in the same rounds, the same policies that the other team will do. All you're doing is changing the mascot. You're not changing the plays. You're not changing policies. You're not doing anything constructive. And really, electorally, nothing gets accomplished. And it really comes down to grassroots initiatives. I mean, look at what the Freedom Convoy was able to accomplish. Even though they got their bank accounts frozen, a lot of them went to prison. They're still dealing with the Tamara Leach and Chris Barber trial, the mishandling of that court case, and how they're still trying to pursue prosecution on them for, organizing a peaceful demonstration. Ultimately, it comes down to grassroots initiatives because, let's face it, your vote clearly does not matter to them. It doesn't matter to the people responsible for the institution of democracy. For people at Elections Canada, apparently your vote is just so useless that they're willing to admit they mishandled it. They're willing to admit that they just don't care about your voice, your votes, your integrity for this country. And that's why ultimately I'm just disgusted. I'm done with electoral, mumbo jumbo, left versus right. That whole argument's over. It really comes down to us versus them. And we as people just need to come together to realize that and come to grassroots initiatives that we can find solutions to these problems with common approaches, with common senses, and align with all sorts of people, whether you're conservative, liberal, NDP, no matter who you are in this world. We can all come together to solve problems. It just takes courage. It just takes initiatives. It just takes getting away from this kind of atmosphere, this kind of mind control atmosphere of one way versus the other. Get away from all this and focus on humanity. Focus on your communities. Start doing little community initiatives. Focus on your neighbors and your friends and family. They're not your enemy. The enemy that's telling you who your enemy is, that's your enemy. The people that are telling you who to hate and lying to you on television, those are the people who are truly your enemy. Not your neighbors, your friends, your family, peoples of the general community, because they're part of the same demise as you are. We can all come together based on that, based on common issues, and solve problems. We can all come together and love one another.